Cop assaulted man in courthouse hallway. However, a call from the Pentagon changed everything. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in the sterile hallway of the Jefferson County Courthouse, casting long shadows on the polished tile floor. It was a typical Tuesday afternoon in the small Midwestern town, lawyers hurrying between courtrooms, clerks shuffling papers, and the occasional echo of a gavel from behind closed doors. But in one narrow corridor leading to the holding cells, chaos erupted in an instant. "Move it, old man," barked Deputy Harlan Brooks, a burly courthouse security officer with 15 years on the job. His voice boomed like thunder, laced with impatience and something darker, frustration from a long shift, perhaps, or the weight of personal troubles he never talked about. In front of him shuffled Elijah Thompson, a 68-year-old black man dressed in a rumpled suit that had seen better days. Elijah had been in court that day for a minor traffic violation turned complicated, a disputed ticket that had snowballed into a bench warrant when he missed a payment due to medical bills. Elijah walked slowly, his hands cuffed loosely in front for the short escort, his steps deliberate because of the arthritis that plagued his knees from decades of hard labor. He'd worked as a mechanic most of his life, fixing cars in a garage he once owned, raising 3 kids on his own after his wife passed young from cancer. He was no stranger to hardship, but he carried himself with quiet dignity, the kind earned from years of perseverance. But Deputy Brooks was having none of it. "I said move," he growled again, grabbing Elijah roughly by the shoulder and shoving him forward. Elijah stumbled, his shoulder slamming hard against the cinderblock wall. Pain shot through his arm like fire, and he let out a sharp gasp, catching himself before falling. "Sir, please, I'm moving as fast as I can," Elijah said calmly, his voice steady despite the ache. He turned slightly, meeting the deputy's eyes with a look not of anger, but of weary understanding. He'd seen men like Brooks before, stressed, quick to lash out, carrying their own burdens. Brooks wasn't in the mood for calm. His face reddened, veins bulging at his temples. "Don't talk back to me," he snapped, and in a flash of temper, he shoved Elijah again, harder this time. Elijah's head clipped the corner of a metal door frame, a thin line of blood trickling from his forehead. He crumpled to one knee, dazed but not crying out. A few onlookers, a janitor mopping nearby, a young attorney waiting for her client, froze in shock. One pulled out a phone to record, but Brooks barked at them to mind their own business. "He's resisting," the deputy claimed loudly, though Elijah hadn't lifted a hand in defense. As Brooks yanked Elijah back to his feet, preparing to drag him the rest of the way, Elijah reached into his pocket with his free hand. The cuffs allowed just enough movement. "Wait," he said softly, pulling out an old flip phone. "I need to make a call. It's important." Brooks laughed derisively. "You think you get phone privileges now? Keep walking." But Elijah insisted, his voice firm yet kind. "It's to the Pentagon. They'll want to know about this." The deputy paused, scoffing. "The Pentagon? Yeah, right. What, you gonna call the president next?" Elijah didn't respond with anger. Instead, he dialed a number from memory, one he'd kept for emergencies over the years. The phone rang twice before a crisp voice answered. "Department of Defense, how may I direct your call?" Brooks snatched the phone away mid-call, but not before the operator heard Elijah's name. "This is some prank," the deputy muttered, but something in Elijah's unflinching gaze made him hesitate. He handed the phone back grudgingly. "Make it quick." Within minutes, the courthouse switchboard lit up. The judge's clerk received an urgent call from a high-ranking official at the Pentagon. Then the sheriff's office. Then the county prosecutor. Whispers spread like wildfire through the building. Elijah Thompson wasn't just any elderly man with a traffic ticket. He was retired Major Elijah Thompson, U.S. Army, decorated veteran of 2 tours in Vietnam and advisory roles in later conflicts. He'd spent the latter part of his career in military intelligence, working closely with Pentagon brass on sensitive operations that saved countless lives. Even in retirement, he consulted occasionally, and his record was impeccable: Purple Heart, Bronze Star, and commendations that few ever heard about because he never boasted. But the real twist came deeper. Deputy Brooks, watching the color drain from his supervisor's face as the calls poured in, learned something that hit him like a gut punch. Years ago, in a desperate moment during a training exercise gone wrong, a young soldier's quick thinking had pulled Brooks's own father, a career Army sergeant, from a burning vehicle in a stateside accident. That soldier, Elijah Thompson, then a captain, who happened to be visiting the base. Brooks's father had spoken of that guardian angel, often before passing from complications years later, describing a kind black officer who risked his own safety without hesitation, staying with him until medics arrived, holding his hand and praying aloud. "That man saved my life, son," his father had said. Pure selflessness. We need more like him. Brooks had never connected the name, never imagined he'd one day lay hands on the very man who gave his family extra years with his dad. As the Pentagon's call reached the courthouse directly, a general personally vouching for Elijah's character and demanding an immediate explanation, the deputy stood frozen. Elijah, now seated with an ice pack from a concerned nurse, looked up at Brooks not with triumph or malice, but with compassion. "You all right, son?" Elijah asked gently, noticing the deputy's shaken expression. "Rough day." Brooks's tough facade cracked. His eyes welled up as the realization sank in. He dropped to one knee beside Elijah, voice breaking. "Sir, Major Thompson, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. Your shoulder, your head, I lost my temper, and God, if you hadn't." Elijah placed a reassuring hand on the younger man's arm, wincing slightly from the pain but smiling faintly. "We all have bad days, deputy. I've had plenty. Anger gets the best of us sometimes. But kindness, that's what pulls us back. You remind me of someone I once helped, a good man who just needed a second chance." The charges against Elijah were dropped immediately. Medical attention was provided on the spot, and Brooks faced disciplinary review, but not without Elijah's quiet intervention, a letter to the sheriff highlighting the deputy's usual dedication and suggesting counseling over punishment. In the weeks that followed, something beautiful unfolded. Brooks visited Elijah at his modest home, bringing groceries and apologizing profusely. Elijah invited him in for coffee, sharing stories of service, loss, and redemption. Brooks opened up about his struggles, divorce, financial stress, the pressure of the job, and Elijah listened without judgment, offering wisdom from a life of quiet heroism. Soon, Brooks volunteered at a local veterans support group Elijah helped run, mentoring young cops on de-escalation and empathy. He even organized a courthouse training session on recognizing hidden heroes among everyday people. One evening, as they sat on Elijah's porch watching the sunset, Brooks turned to him. "You could have had me fired, sir. Ruined me, but you showed mercy." Elijah chuckled, softly. "Mercy isn't weakness, son. It's what makes us human. Your father taught you that, I bet. And one day, you'll pass it on." In a world quick to judge and slow to forgive, their unlikely bond became a quiet testament to the power of compassion, a reminder that beneath uniforms and titles, we're all just people, capable of hurting and healing in equal measure. And sometimes, a single act of kindness, long forgotten, echoes back to change everything.